Welcome. In this training video, I will demonstrate server-side programming and client-side programming. It will be just an overview and some introductory concepts. And another thing is I really not prepared for this presentation, so I will say whatever comes to my mind. I hope that will be useful. And the target audience is beginner to intermediate level of web developers. Anyway, see if you find it useful or not. So this training video will be about defining server-side programming and defining client-side programming and trying to make them understand through some examples. And this is Saeed, by the way. This is my personal profile and this is the email if you have any concerns. So, what are the discussion topics? I will explain what are client-side programming and what are server-side programming. And to demonstrate those, I also need to discuss the basic website structure. And then I will demonstrate the concepts of server-side programming and client-side programming with some examples. I will use an example application. We can call it user profile management. It can be some, let's say for a publishing company, the user profile management, or for a telecommunications company to maintain the user profile, to save information about the profile and let them update their profile if they need. So just a simple application. So that application will demonstrate server-side programming concept and client-side programming concept. So what is the basic structure of a website, or what happens when we try to browse a website? So you can see that in step 1, the client types the name of a website or the name of a web page in the internet. In the web page, it's located on the server on a remote computer. So when user uses some sort of browsers, Internet Explorer or Firefox, types the name of the web page, it will bring that web page from the server to the client. I think we just try, let's see, www.justetc.com/index.php. We can try this in the Internet Explorer. So this index.php, it actually situated in a remote server PC. We can see this server PC, we can assume this is the justetc.com server and the index.php file is resided there. So when user types it in the browser, the request goes to this server, and then the server delivers this page to the client, and the client can see that web page in his browser. So what are the steps here? The user requests contents and the server responds back with that web page. There can have additional steps in between or before. So maybe sometimes it can happen that just after the user types something and he requests, some programming code may run on the user's computer depending on the situation. Let's see if the user let's say the user is viewing an existing web page and he tries to click some button, and through that button it is supposed to bring some other web page from the server. So when the user clicks the button, depending on the web page, it may execute some sort of programming code on the user's browser. So it can happen, but if the user requests the web page for the first time and not from an existing web page, hopefully this 1.x will not be there. Another thing is, after the web page comes back to the user's page, the web page can execute some other code in the user's computer. So these are the client-side scripting. But another thing is, when the server gets a request from the user that the user needs a web page, the web page itself can execute some sort of code on the server side, maybe to fetch some data from the database, or to implement some sort of logic, some sort of processing calculation. So even the web page content can be generated dynamically. So those code that will be executed on the server is called server side coding, server side scripting. Yeah. So I think this is a more clear picture of the website structure. First, the user requests and it goes to the server, and there is some software on the server that accepts these requests, and then depending on the website, the requested web page can bring some data from the database, and this output data or the output from any of the code, all those are wrapped into XHTML file or HTML file in step 3, and then it is sent back to the client. So whatever code that runs on this computer is the client-side script. Whatever code runs here is called the server-side programming. And we can remember one thing: the page we are requesting, it can be some plain text. So that are not code, that are just the content of the web page. But if it does some sort of processing, then it will be the code, client side or server side, whatever you can easily understand. So what is client side scripting? These are computer programs that runs on the web and that are executed on the client side and by the user's browser. We can write this code in many different scripting languages like JavaScript, jQuery, VBScript. And for server-side scripting, these are computer programs that run on the web that are executed on the server side. And you can easily see server side, we mean here, we mean there. So it is usually used to provide interactive websites. Also, it provides interface to the database or other data stores. PHP, Perl, Ruby, JSP, all are server-side scripting languages. Okay, now I will explain those concepts using some examples. The example application is user profile management. And what we want to do for a publishing company, we want to develop a web-based profile management system so that users will be able to log in and change information about them. So what are the user interfaces for that application? There will be user login page where the users will log in, and there will be some success page. After login is successful, the user is there, user information will show up, and the user will be able to edit those. So it will be an edit form, and on error, we will display the error message that the user is not exist, or the user ID or password did not match, or the user name field is empty, those type of error messages. We also again show the login option if the user makes a mistake or there is something wrong. So we'll come back to the login page again and show some error message or warning message. Okay, this is the user interface for the web application. So this is the login page. Users will be able to log in here, and this is a sample user profile edit form. So some user information is displayed there. The users will be able to edit it after the successful login. Let's see how the application works actually. So it will bring that application. Okay, so this is the application login error. I think there is some logic working here. It is checking that the username field is empty, password field is empty, so it is displaying that username and password are empty and it needs those. So this logic is executed on this browser, on this Firefox, Mozilla Firefox. So the code that is determining this and showing this alert box is part of the client-side scripting. So if I give it this is also outcome of the client-side scripting. So let's say I have given the username and password. So I'll try to log in. At this moment the fields are not empty. So login request will go to the server, and actually what happens here, the server determines that the login ID and password are not valid. So after processing in the server side, it determines it's not right, so it sends back to the client, and the client is displaying that no user is in the database. So there are some server side programming executed at this time that determined whether this user is part of the profile management system or not. Anyway, I think we didn't see what happened on the server side, but it happened somewhere on the server side. So now I can try to keep the right login and password. So the successful login, and so here is the user profile with all the information, and you can edit the user information. The user can edit this and he can save. At this moment this save and cancel button is not working. I did not implement that, but I think checking the username and password in the database, making sure that it exists, that there are some logic involved with this, and also if the user exists, I grab the data from the database and display it in this form. Okay, all this code and logic, everything is executed on the server side, and the server sends this information to the client and it gets displayed there. So all those logic to bring up the database and checking that whether the user exists or not, those are part of the server side scripting. Anyway, as I mentioned that on the server side, the database maintains the user information, ID and password information, all the user details. So in the database side, we maintain some sort of table to store those information. So the data storage, it contains some user information, it contains some user details. I think I used some relational database management system. If you know it, that's good. Or you can assume that there are some sort of storage there. You can even store those information in some sort of file. You'll just change the way you write your code. If it is in database, you'll be writing the code in some way. If it is stored on the file, you will be writing your code for the verification of the user in a different way. So in general, you can maintain two different tables, user and user details. User table, it contains ID, username and password. User details, it contains the rest of the details. So I think I will demonstrate some of the code now. I think this is login form, the form that you see for the first time. So this is the form, I think. Yeah. Okay, it's not client-side script, it's not server-side script, it is just the content of the web page, some plain HTML or plain TXT, whatever you say. Okay, I think this part is server-side script, I would say, because it actually runs, but rest of this stuff is just to display the login ID, login box and password box and the corresponding labels and login button, all those things. So this is the username area, this is the password area, this is the login button area. This is just to display that whether the username is exist in the database side or not. Actually this code is executed on the server, and this total block is replaced with the with this message depending on the situation. So this is the client side script that is determining whether username and password field are empty or not. It runs on the client side. So we are getting the username from the username box. We are getting the password from the username box. So a password box, and we're just checking if username and password are empty or not. If they are empty, so we concatenate that error message and we just alert the error message. Okay, this is actually a JavaScript document object, and this is some method for the document object to get the content of the username text box. Okay, I think I can show that. See, the username text box, it's ID, and ID is username, and password text box is ID is password. That's why we are telling get element by ID, get element by ID. We could rather use get element by name, get element by name, but that's a little more complicated than ID. So this is the server side script. The main logic of the server side script is here. I think this code runs on the server and it puts the outcome in the web page that is sent to the on the client side. I think in the second figure, where I was just demonstrating the website structure, we can see that all the outcomes are wrapped in text HTML or HTML file, and then it is sent back to the client. So anyway, this is this main script that runs on the server side. So first we connect to the database. I think, as I told, I store the information in a relational database management system. I think it will not allow everybody to connect, so I need to connect it first, and then I send the username and password and try to verify if the user exists there or not. So if the user doesn't exist or password doesn't match, then I go back to the index file, the main login page. I'm just sending a status 0. That means that it's not successful. But if the login is successful, then here I will be generating the user profile from the database. So you can try to see the details here. Let's say in the database connection, we need where the database is located. What is the name of the database? Where the database is located? It is in localhost. It means that where this server script is located, the database is located in the same machine. So to log into the database, these are the username and password. So it is checking MySQL Connect, can we connect or not. If we can, then it comes here, it returns the handle to the database, otherwise it tells that we cannot connect, and it stops. If it can get connected but it cannot connect to the database, then it will say unable to select the database. Anyway, so these are the verify user. So we are checking against the database. I think this username and password, we are collecting this username and password from the client side. Whatever the client is sent to the server, we are collecting those things, and we are checking against those tables, the users table and users details table. Actually, we are checking with users table if the username and password is there. If it is there, we are grabbing user details from the user details table. So, and we are sending this output. Okay, just I'm grabbing this output here, and we're sending that data into this function, and here we are actually generating that the content of the web page or the edit form web page. Okay, if you want to take a look at the total source code, I think this is the index.txt. It will actually, you can download it and rename it at index.php. Then it will show you the total code. Okay, I think, yeah, I think the URL is all right. I think the internal linking URL is a little different than the URL that is shown here. So, but if you go to this URL, you will find these pages. Maybe I can go and show you. Actually, the URL was different. I just changed it, but I think I changed the font, but I did not change the href. So this is what you can see, the total index.php. You need to rename it to make it work. And this is the client side script in the same file. You can keep it in a different file, but for simplicity, as this is the introduction, so I keep it in the same file. And it is the total another PHP file. I think there are mostly server side code here. I think this part, yeah, it is executed on the server side. It is the database connection. Okay, now I think this is the main logic. This is the database connection related operation. This is the verification, user verification related operation. This is the grabbing data from the database and creating the edit from related operations. All this is done under this PHP start PHP and ending PHP. This tag those are executed on the server side. And I think there is one more stuff that you can check. I think this is the structure of the tables are used on the server side. So you can see users table, ID, username, password, and you can see the corresponding data type and those things. User details, this is another table, some data, sample data. So these are some screenshots from the tool PHP MyAdmin. That is something widely used for web hosting or this website development purpose, to I think some tools to interact with MySQL database. So I think you will know it. I mean, you really should know it, because if you want to work with web development in open source platform, MySQL PHP platform, probably you will use it. Anyway, I think this is all. So let's see again. I hope that by this time you understand what server-side programming is. The program, the code that runs on the server in the remote. Client-side programming, it runs on the client side, on the user's browser. Okay, we also demonstrated these concepts using some example. Hope you find it useful. Thank you and have a good day.